Welcome to the Custodial Support Forum, where each week we discuss issues related to one of the largest problems in America, child support. Hi, my name is Kai Patterson and I'm your host.
Are you owed child support?
Does the non-custodial parent of your children avoid your calls, hide their income and assets, or has relocated to prevent paying child support?
The Custodial Support Foundation provides you with the services to begin receiving the child support your children need.
Call 855-851-HELP now to receive the help your children deserve.
Earlier we discussed some of the problems associated with child support in America. To help us with some of the solutions, I have our legal analyst, attorney Ben Kelsen. How you doing, Ben?
Fine, thank you, Kai. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Ben, $100 billion is owed in child support arrears to 12.5 million custodial parents that have child support orders. 25 million custodial parents don't have orders, and it's estimated that they're owed over $200 billion. Let's talk about custodial parents that have an order, because we know that for those who don't have orders, that the solution for them is to file. But let's talk about the 12.5 million custodial parents that are owed $100 billion. What can a custodial parent do when a non-custodial parent has the financial wherewithal to pay, but they're basically taking advantage of the system and evading the system's ability to collect child support?
It's a very, very good question, Kai. I think that we've noticed, and we spoke about 5 different problems that arise or that could face a custodial parent when trying to pursue a child support enforcement order. The first thing we spoke about was the issue of not having enough information in order to be able to apply and to file for the order. What happens with this is that the process itself can be very often, it's too confusing. There's too many papers, there's too many forms. It's intimidating. You're handed a bunch of legal papers to fill out. You're standing on lines in an office. People, as it was mentioned, may not be able to help you with what's going on. And as also was mentioned, that can be a very embarrassing sort of process to go through. The third problem that we find out is that the Office of Child Support Enforcement only garnishes wages in situations where they actually know where the person is and if there's actually a child support order.
Correct.
The Child Support Enforcement Office does not actually go out and get an enforcement order. See, the process that works is basically that we have, first a child support order is given by the court. A motion for child support is made.
So you have that order first?
Correct. The court will issue an order telling a non-custodial parent that they are required by law to pay a certain amount of child support. After that, you have to file what's called a motion to enforce litigants' rights.
Correct.
In order to be able to get an enforcement order.
So this is when the non-custodial parent doesn't pay. You get that order, you get the original order, you're owed arrears, and now they won't pay. You get an enforcement order. You seek an enforcement order.
Right. You file a motion with the court, and then the court will give you a motion to enforce the payment of those child support arrears.
Okay.
Then you take that to the Office of Child Support Enforcement, and then they can actually do something.
Let's back up. Okay, what do you need to get an enforcement order?
Well,
do you have to do any work? I mean, what do you have to do any investigative work?
Absolutely, as was mentioned earlier. In order for the Office of Child Support Enforcement to help you, you have to help them to help you.
Okay.
And what that basically means is that you have to be able to provide for them certain information, as we stated earlier. First, you have to be able to get the location of the non-custodial parent.
Right.
That's the first thing. Because
So
if you don't know where the guy,
that means you need some type of investigative service.
Correct.
And there are some cheap ones out here that are very, very cost effective. There's one that I know of.
Okay. Right. So the first thing you're trying to find is the location of the non-custodial parent.
Okay.
The second thing that you're looking for is, and as was mentioned earlier, you need to have the proper legal name of the non-custodial parent. So very often we have problems where people don't know the non-custodial parent's
Let's
real
assume
name.
you know
Correct.
the name, you got the information, you got the order.
Right.
Now you've done the investigative work. Now you're going to need some type of what? Legal documents prepared?
Correct. You're going to
Okay.
have to go and file what's called, as we said, a motion to enforce litigants' rights.
Okay.
You're going to have to go into the court. You're going to have to explain to the judge in the motion papers and possibly during oral argument, in other words, presenting yourself in front of the judge.
Okay.
And you're going to have to explain, this is what's happened. The order was given to me that I'm supposed to be getting a certain amount of money in child support, and I'm not getting it.
Okay.
Once that's done, then the judge will be able to issue the enforcement order. But again, it's important to remember that there are certain facts that you have to have there. In addition to the name, you need the social security number, you need to have a date of birth, you need to know exactly where the person's working.
And it also helps if you can show income or prove if you have some type of investigative work done where you can show the income.
Right, which is one of the other problems that we mentioned, is actually the fifth of the problems that a custodial parent will often have, which is that in order to be able to obtain an enforcement order on their own, that could very well and very often be cost prohibitive. In other words, it can be
Right.
very costly for them to do so. Between the costs of hiring an investigator, or sometimes what's referred to as a bounty hunter or a skip tracer,
Right.
in order to be able to hire that individual or that company, and then to have an attorney draft all the paperwork, file the paperwork, go into the court in order to get the order for you, can be cost prohibitive.
It could cost you more than what you owe in arrears.
Correct, and I think one of the
Considering
panelists
average,
mentioned that. Right.
Considering that the average parent is owed about $8,000 in arrears, between the legal fees and the investigative fees, I mean, that can well exceed that. Also, here's the other question: collections. Okay, let's assume that you're going to get this enforcement order. They still can't garnish. How are you dealing with collections? Do you have to hire a private collection agency?
So you do it. So you may have to hire a private collection agency. Now the problem that occurs is that sometimes there are private collection agencies. There are businesses like any other, and they'll take a portion of the arrears as their payment. Now the problem with that is that at a certain point, as we mentioned earlier, that could very often lead to a complacency on the part of the custodial parent, because why am I going to go chase after money if this company is going to end up taking a huge chunk of that, what's coming to me? So
Correct.
it's important for the people to understand that that's something that could happen, which is why they need to seek out a company or a foundation or an organization that can help them, that will not be taking out a percentage of whatever the arrearages are.
I'm looking at some of these percentages that are collected. You have agencies that will collect 20, 25%, 30, and some as high as 40% of the actual arrears.
Correct.
I know some attorney generals are having problems with organizations like this, but is this legal for them to do this?
Absolutely, it's a business. This is how the people make their living, and the way that they would look at it is that if it wasn't for them going about doing these collections, then you, as the custodial parent, would not have that money coming in. So it is perfectly legal, but very often it is something which is daunting to the custodial parent, and it also, as I said earlier, can end up becoming as a cost-benefit analysis, something which a custodial parent may decide is not really worth the effort.
Wow. Now, okay, we talked about collections, okay? Let's talk about non-custodial parents that have warrants, okay? We know that a lot of times I've had custodial parents complain, as one of the guests stated, that a lot of times they won't even go and pick up the non-custodial parent with a warrant. Okay, so now should a custodial parent consider using a service like a bounty hunter to go pick them up once there's an arrest warrant that's been issued?
So you have to be careful with that type of activity.
Okay.
Different states and different jurisdictions will have different rules as to what it is that bounty hunters or skip tracers, as we've mentioned before, would actually do, or what they're empowered to be able
Correct.
to do.
Absolutely.
It definitely helps to know where the person is and where they're working. The reason for that is that the courts, once they have an ability to be able to garnish wages, may not need to go after an individual. However, if there's a warrant that's out, once that person comes into contact with the legal system in any way, there's a traffic stop,
Right.
they're applying for some sort of a document, they go show up in the courthouse for jury duty.
But Ben, that could take years. That could take years for somebody to be
Correct.
picked up.
Right.
But here's something I wanted to talk about. A writ of execution to seize and liquidate assets, okay? Once you get an enforcement order, you can actually seize and liquidate the non-custodial parent's assets. A lot of custodial parents are not aware of that.
Right, that is correct. What you can do from there is you can go, after you have your order of enforcement.
Correct.
You move to the next step, which would be to have a motion to be able to from the court that will allow you the opportunity to be able to have either the sheriff's department or marshals or whoever it may be in your jurisdiction be able to go and seize assets in order to make up for those arrearages. Many custodial parents are not aware of that. Now, there are certain limitations on that as far as what type of asset and what type of property would be seized, but it is definitely an avenue that is there for a custodial parent to use to try to be able to get the money that is owed for their children. This is not money that they're taking for themselves, which is very important to remember. This is actually money for the children.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I don't want to cut you short, Ben, but you know we're running out of time. This has been wonderful. I mean, the information that available to custodial parents, I think that it's amazing that they're not aware of this information. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite the viewers to watch our show each week, where we're going to discuss different problems associated with the problems of child support in America, so provide solutions. And we're going to also talk about what the steps custodial parents can take in each of these processes.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Kai. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to continuing with you next week.
It's been a pleasure, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you.